that's true. Naked Palpatine.
Oh, you pick that one. Fresh out of the clone tank, nude Palpatine is my
Well, that's the first thing I think of when you say Dark Empire Palpatine.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Malazan, Book of the Fallen, Book 9, Dust of Dreams, Prologue, Book 1, Book 2. Before I even get into this, I kind of have to explain that I think originally Stephen Erickson wanted to write just Book 9. Would have been one gigantic tome, close to 2,000 pages. But there's no conceivable way to do that with publishing, with nobody makes a book that's usually like that big in one volume. So it got split into two. Now that doesn't mean it just like cuts off abruptly. It does have an end, but it is, and I think you see this a lot with movie to book adaptations now. But just as recent as having Dune Part 1 and Part 2, which is just the one novel, Dune, by Frank Herbert. But instead of that, it's just actually a novel, where we have, a lot of this is rising for the climax, or this is like the first half of one story in two books. So I say this because it's going to feel a little different from the other books by Erickson. If you've noticed, there's very much you have the prologue, books 1 through 4, epilogue. Even if there are threads to be carried over into a following book, that story feels pretty much concluded within that novel, But with this one, that's not the case. So Book 9 and Book 10 are essentially one story split into two. And with that, this book in particular does not have an epilogue. And Crippled God doesn't have a prologue. But it doesn't have an epilogue. So you see what I mean by that? But yeah, today we'll be discussing that first half of Dust of Dreams. And then, of course, next time we will be discussing how the book ends. So I'm not going to critique the book as a whole, as always, because I haven't finished it. I will say non-spoiler-wise. It's a bit slower. I don't think it's as slow as Told the Hounds was, but it's definitely building up a lot of stuff, and there's going to be a lot of stuff. And Erickson even says within the opening parts of this book, like, there's going to be a lot of things set up that you're not going to have answers for till the next book, but please have patience. Now, I don't have to have patience, because the book is already, the Crippled God's already out, but for a bunch of people, they had to wait. It's not very happy. There's not as much humor as, it's always been very mixed in Malazan with the humor, right? Like, you get a balance of that and dark, serious stuff, but this one feels very dour in a lot of spots. Because we're heading toward the end. But I also know Erickson, and I know there's going to be, whatever darkness comes is going to be light by the end of this series, so I trust in that. But overall, do I like it? Of course I do. I think I still like it more than Book 4, House of Chains. Although, of course, my favorite thing ever in Malazan so far is still, Midnight Tides, number 1. And then Book 1 specifically of House of Chains, because it's all Clarissa Orlong. But I still really enjoy this one. And like I said, there's not a single Malazan book that I don't enjoy. And I've been going through the books in the Malazan Empire, and those I may like less. I think I'll be fair to say that I don't like the Esselman books I've read so far as much as Erickson's, but it doesn't mean I don't enjoy them. I think they both add something different to the table, and I've enjoyed my journey through all of them. But we're here and we're nearing the end, so I'm going to get into spoilers. If you don't want that, now it's time to go. But last thing on non-spoiler wise, I think it's absolutely worth your time, And again, as I've been saying, if you're 9 books in, or if you've read Toll the Hounds and you're still kicking, you're gonna finish the series. It's too late to give up now. But I do think it's worth your time, at least from what I've read so far. I, of course, haven't finished the novel yet. Anyway, we're going to go on to Prologue, and if you expect me to give you answers or explanations, I don't have any for you. You didn't know either on your first time reading. We have the Prologue with some characters. Rut, Badal, Calith, a baby named Held, that, uh, and then we also have Kachin Shamel with these soldiers named like the Vigath, or is that just a single person? It could be just a single person. Again, it's been a while since I read the prologue. Um, this character name, I'm just again, it's just giving me a bunch of names, so I'm writing down things that may or may not even matter to the later plot. I don't know what matters and what doesn't, so I'm just writing it down. We have Brennigan, Gunthin, Ackle, the matron. Um, K. Calith is going to become the new Destrian, and she's basically meant to replace Red Mask, who died back in Reaper's Gale, because the Change Shemel is still looking for like a mortal sword or whatever, and shield anvil something. They're still looking for that. They want that. They don't have that, so they're making her do stuff, as far as my understanding goes. Um, and then Haboric at the end, um, not alive, I don't think, but like a ghost of him or like a spirit of him, or did he ascend? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But it is definitely Hiboric. That's what I know for sure. And Jade Hands. You thought those things didn't matter? You know, they were in 2 and 4, and then they're in 6 a little bit, and they keep popping back up every time you forget that that's even a plot point. But you know, I'm trying to reread. This is invigorating, but I have no idea. But Hiboric, which means Jade Hands and Jade Things. So, yeah. It's coming from a first time reader, guys. Like, I don't know what to tell you about it. And we move on to book 1. Does not dreams. The sea does not dream of you. Um, Bottle's back. We love Bottle. Bottle was in. I think he got introduced in Bone Hunters. He was a lot of fun. Um, There's this kind of fun opening chase scene where a bunch of the Malazan people are chasing someone, and we learn that it's Fiddler because they want him to do a reading with the cards. Um, and of course, we are currently, at least in this section, in Lether, which means we get the return of T-Hole and Bug, who, of course, he is now King T-Hole, and was it Sita slash Chancellor slash Treasurer slash everything Bug slash male, because he's also an Elder God. Um, we also get reintroduced to Lestariel. Um, we also get to see Serembetic again, who is 6 months pregnant with uh, with Troll Sangar's child. This is also a thing of this must. What I think is happening, because Toll the Hounds happens after Reaper's Gale, and Reaper's Gale is when uh, Troll dies at the end of it. Unfortunately, one of my favorite characters. However, I don't know the time placement of Reaper's or of Toll the Hounds exactly. I imagine it happens kind of during 7 and a little bit after, because it involves um, mostly characters that weren't in the previous story, minus like Cutter. Um, so I guess it would be within that time span. But then also, I feel like Dust to Dreams right now, at least from what I've read, this may all, in the first 2 books, may be taking place during Toll the Hounds, and that the second half may finally progress after Toll the Hounds. Not sure. We'll see. I need a direct sort of reference point of like someone mentioning the death of Anamander Rake to kind of have a fitting place for the timeline. Um, Saren's child is pregnant to be the new Knight of Shadow now that Troll is dead, which is interesting. We have Orsto and Pizel, I don't know. The Lord and Lady of Beer, who male asks for help, and they are gods that have been pretty much forgotten because people just see beer now as like mundane or whatever. But apparently there were gods for them, and they act very drunk, very in line for the gods of what they are of, I guess. But they were fun little additions. We get to see Eudinus again, who now has a child that is a dragon, which I completely forgot the little aspect about that. We get to see Onrak again and Silchus Ruin. Silchus Ruin, this is a whole thing of itself. Silchus, wants Eudinus's child because he's like a dragon thing. So that's something that hasn't been addressed yet, but it might be in the second half. But yeah, he wants Eudinus's child. Also, there's a quote I think by Onrak who says, "Teaching children is like throwing sand at obsidian." Um, and the main thing of that was kind of, I believe that, you can try to teach a child as much as you can about the way of the world and how to best operate in it, but ultimately the best way they're going to learn is through failure. They're going to do things on their own. They might rebel, or it's not rebelling. They're kind of figure things out on their own, and they will learn through experience. And I just thought that was a good little thing. We get another, I think, a Kachin Shamel named Run Thorarian. We also get introduced to a character named Yeden Burge. Um, we also get introduced to the Sheikh, witches, and think they were in Reaper's Gale. Kind of forgetting. I forget. There's a lot of plot points in these books, but I do recognize the name, so that is a return. Um, we get reintroduced because, again, Midnight Tides is my favorite, so that one's the biggest one on the memory. Shirkalale and Eubula return. Eubula the Toblakai. I am saying it right, by the way. I know in the past videos I've called it Tobloki because I'm stupid, but I know it's Toblakai, and that sounds much better than what I was saying. Anyway, but that's Eubula. You kind of like the silly giant, and Shirkalale, the undead woman that likes to have a lot of sex. That's like her whole thing. Um, which is that necrophilia? I feel like that is. Anyway, we're not gonna think about it too much. Then we get the Fiddler card reading, which is really intense and really cool, but also something because I've been reading the Esselmont books, so I did read Orb Scepter Throne because chronologically I think it takes place after Soul of the Hounds. Sin, one of the bone hunters, is Scepter. Gessler is the Orb card, and Stormy is the Throne card. What are those three together? Orb, Scepter, Throne. Fun little thing there. Um, Bug is acting very serious, acting very worried about things, promising to protect Saren, even though they were not very close. They met like once at the end of book 7, I think. I could be wrong. But, no, it's not true. They must have met before that. I don't know. Anyway, but he's just so serious, and it's such a contrast because he's usually so, you know, dry humor wit with T-Hole. So anytime that T-Hole and Bug are serious, you know that it's serious. And I enjoyed Bug slash Mail's talk with Saren. We also have Tellerist and Curdle, if you remember them, and they can turn into dragons, I think, unless I'm misreading. Now, alrighty, I guess. Um, also, um, we get reintroduced to Tool. I mean, we saw Tool earlier, but we got Tool here, and his wife, and we learn that Kroopy has some offspring, some daughters, which is crazy. Um, we have this character named Turrent of the AWOL from Book 7. He wasn't in Book 7, I don't think, or he might have been unnamed, I don't know. But he's like, I think maybe gonna be the new Red Mask? I don't know. He keeps mentioning the Copper Mask. But I'm pretty sure Red Mask died. So this is another person. Again, it's a little confusing to me. But we got a new guy, Turrent, and he'll be in a big portion of this book. Um, We also have Caleb and Hiboric, more Jade stuff. Not too much to say about it because I don't really know what it all means, but it's a continual thread. Um, my next note was everything is fundamentally changing. Quickbore, Tavor, and Shadow Throne and Cotillion. Um, so it is seeming like part of the plan of Shadow Throne and Cotillion is to kind of kill off the gods until there are none left. But what will the world look like after the fact if that is the case? And what is their plan for themselves because they themselves have ascended and become gods? I don't know if that's exactly their plan. I think that's what some of these characters are speculating is their plan. We don't really know what their plan is because we're not really from their POV. I don't know what's going on, but it does seem like there's something involving the gods possibly being killed off at some point in this book or the Crippled God. I don't know. But that is seemingly the direction that the story is heading. We'll see if that is subverted or not, but that is seemingly the case. Acarest Corvellian is an older Warren of the Forkle Sail, so I just thought I would write that down. We have Ubula Pung gets a calling. He must go and gather an army for Karsa, who is not in this book, by the way. But so that's something to watch out for. Also, a mention that I thought worthy of mention. There is a warrior cult called Burn Tears, which worships Coltane, who died back in Deadhouse Gates. So, what are we, like 7 years since then, and he's already getting worship about him? Interesting. Anyway, then we move on to Book 2, Eaters of Diamonds and Gems. We have the Errant, who is the guy that would have sex with a bunch of people in like Book 5. I don't know. But he's like Master of the Tiles, which is like the older form of the Decker Dragons. And he's just like talking to the forgotten gods, like the older gods who no one cares about anymore, about kind of like getting back power that they once had. He also he he tries to justify his killing of Featherwitch, which he did in I think Reaper's Gale. Um, yeah, I mean I don't forgive you. I don't think your justification matches what you've done, but all right, bud. We also get reintroduced to Kilomandros and Osurik. This was a part, I forget who was making this claim, but there was a bunch of things being said. But again, it was this is from my perspective, my interpretation. This may not be what he meant. I don't know. But um, if you believe in monotheism, your god is cursed. I think this was something that maybe Tool was saying. I don't remember. Um, because I just wrote down the quote. I just wrote down, if you believe in monotheism, your god is cursed. Um, if you believe in one god, you know, it seemed to be doing that similar sort of thing of like, well, if you believe in one god and your god does not stop like evil and suffering, then your god is evil, or your god isn't strong enough to do so. That sort of argument that is made in sort of philosophical theological circles, um, which um, so either God is cruel or just doesn't care or doesn't have the power to stop it, or there's multiple gods, or there are no gods. Like sort of like the implication out of all that. I don't know. It seemingly was sort of the implication there. It was about more than just that. It was relevant to the story at hand, but I did think it was also a bit of a philosophical thing being argued in the text, and valid and completely understandable. But also, there's another option where if you do believe in monotheism, it could simply just be that maybe there's a reason why it would be allowed. See, because the problem with the whole analogy of like, well, then maybe he's not powerful enough to stop it. Maybe he is powerful enough to stop it, but he's not doing it. It's not because he's cruel. Maybe it's because there's a reason for it. The only way to directly argue against such logic would be to you yourself know everything and every outcome, and could therefore determine that there is no justifiable reason for suffering or evil and all that, because that's kind of the mentality and the assumption that comes with such a claim, is that, well, there's literally no reason for this to happen, and I know this was my limited time on Earth, which is only like 80 years at most, 100 if you're lucky, and some people aren't even lucky with 80. And so within that limited framework of knowledge that you have within this limited short time span of life, then you can decide with that against infinity that there's no justifiable reason. But if you could even make the claim that there's maybe a justifiable reason for such things to be allowed, then the argument falls flat. As long as there's a possibility that there's a justifiable reason, then it kind of countermands the, oh, there's no reason. Because how could you say that against infinity? You know, again, for the sake of argument, if there is an all-powerful being who knows all, sees all, is all-knowing, all this stuff, and has existed forever, has all this knowledge, who are you to say that there isn't a reason for this? It is quite arrogant to assume that you would know better with, our limited time on Earth. Whether you be the highest scholar in the universe or somebody as me who's only graduated high school and never did anything more, who am I to say that there isn't a justifiable reason for something? How do I know? I have a limited time frame here. I don't know. But as long as there is a possibility that there's a reason, it kind of dissuades the argument that God couldn't stop it. Well, maybe he can. It just doesn't for a reason that I don't know. You know, it's kind of the argument from evil is basically the point that is made in philosophical circles and theological debates with like atheists, which is if your God was good, this and all these priorities and preconceptions put on top of this thing to make their position correct, which is well, if your God was good, then this and this would not happen, therefore your God does not exist. Like that doesn't really work. Again, as long as there's a possibility of an explanation, it kind of dissuades the whole thing. Anyway, I'm going to get off this topic, but that was something I noticed, kind of like made me raise my eyebrow. It was more than that in the text. It wasn't just about that, but that seemed like a possible, again, that could have been completely something like off the radar for Erickson, and it's just something that I'm completely, because of my own preconceived background, am putting into the text, but that's also part of the death of the author thing, right, or the interpretation of a text. But Stephen Erickson's usually, when he writes stuff, he also likes to put a bit of philosophy and, just thinking things in there for you to think about. So maybe that wasn't intentional, but it did make me think, and I just thought I'd mention it because, yeah, I don't think it's necessarily cursed or stupid to believe in monotheism. Just different strokes, different folks, as they say. And moving on from that topic, Autorio Dragon. Now, my dogs are barking loud, but hold on a second. Anyway, where was I? Autorio Dragon. So as I was trying to say, I completely forgot, and I had like a light bulb moment in my head, because like back during book 4, they had like mentions of an Autorio Dragon, and I was like, oh, that might be important later, and I completely forgot about it until this moment when they mentioned the Autorio Dragon again, and there's actually an Autorio Dragon, like, that would be resistant to magic, so that's a problem. Tool's Barghest army keeps like arguing with him about what they should be doing, and they, I think they're asking him like, like what should we worship? Da, 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 da. There's a whole bunch of things being said there, but the big thing I got from that is he says to worship compassion. Between anything else, worship, you know, protect your people, protect each other, and always show compassion, and that's what you should worship, if anything. It's just having that, being that, living that, stuff like that. And it was a nice part. I'm not doing it justice. I'm not Stephen Erickson, and I didn't write down the whole quote, but it was a good one. T-Hole and Bug, and there's this fake argument at dinner because Shirk and Janeth want to talk, but instead of, just saying we want the room for a second, they do this whole elaborate charade of Shirk wants to have sex with T-Hole, and then Janeth's like, and then, you know, like Shirk's like, well, I wouldn't. He's not that great anyway. And she's like, well, you don't think my husband's that great? It's like that's the whole thing. It's all really funny, and it's all just to get them out of the room because T-Hole gets uncomfortable. What is Zamvow? Zamvow, like a fork roll sale named Zamvow, is very freaking hateful. like wants to rape, like just a lot of talk about rape and how that would be good for his people to get revenge on these other people because 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 whatever wrongs they've done to you, it justifies like having like a gang rape of their woman or something, and it's just I'm gonna be honest. I skimmed it. It was bothering me just having to be inside this guy's head. He's a very uncomfortable person, not very pleasant. So I skimmed it, and I apologize if I'm not giving you further context on this little portion. But he was pissing me off, so I skimmed ahead. Um, Sakara, also a very vile and hateful person, though in a different way. Less about rape, so didn't like her either. Um, Yiden Sheikh, aka the Watch, kills Repose, a fork wholesale, and that was a pretty epic scene, gotta say. T-Hole and Bug, perhaps a final time with our gang, for now. I expect to not see T-Hole and Bug again, or at least T-Hole until the finale of Crippled God. Like, epilogue, maybe. There's just a sort of way the scene ends, because a bunch of, like, people that were in Nether, like from armies of the Malazans to the little bit of an army that Teal had, have left the city, and they've gone to help with this mission. Which leaves Teal pretty much alone. And, you know, the three of them are a funny duo, but when it's just the three of them, like, what are you really going to do? So I have a feeling we're not going to see them again. But there's just a way about this, like, this weird, I don't know, it gave me a weird vibe, this weird, like, final dinner that they're going to have. And I don't know if Bug/Mail is going to survive this entire plot thread. If all the gods have to die, if that is somewhere they're going with this story, I mean, Bug is an elder god, which would include him as someone that might die. I don't know. There was just sort of this finality, and he also talks about like how Beers, Teal's brother might not make it back. I don't know. There was just a lot of foreboding and sort of uncertainty in the scene, but there was this also like niceness of just Teal invites this random guard to come and sit with them and drink wine and just let's get an artist. You know, let's take a picture. You know, let's memorize this very simple, non-dramatic, plain moment of all of us just being here to kind of like immortalize it. It felt like, but again, why such emphasis on that? Like, what's going on? So I don't know. I'm gonna stop this one more time. Too many distractions, and I was almost done. Anyway, on to like literally the end. I was so close to being done. Tool and the Barghast are still having issues. Tool does not want to start anything. He wants to get the Barghast away. They want to fight this and that. The constant arguing. It won't stop. And somebody finally challenges him, even though he didn't want to, and he easily strikes him down. So now everybody's listening to him, even though, you know, he thought he was going to finally be free. And then, unless they trick me again and he's not dead, because they do this sometimes with characters like Sorry, Napslar, he forces this guy, grabs him by the wrist, slowly plunges his knife down into his chest, and passes away. And to think we called him coward. Not fun. And that's kind of the big thing before book 2 ends. I mean, there's a little bit after that, but that's really, it's the big thing on my mind. So, Tool's gone. One of my favorites. Liked him since Gardens. Now gone. Unless they bring him back. And we'll see what happens in the second half of this story. But that's pretty much it for my first half thoughts on Malazan Book of the Fallen, Book 9, Dust of Dreams. I'll let you know, non-spoiler, my thoughts on the entire book when I finish Book 3 and Book 4. And then we'll get into what happens in that second half. But I hope you all stick around for that. And again, I know I miss a lot of things. If I was doing a whole podcast series with somebody else, it'd be much better, like, getting every little detail. If you want a bigger, more in detail thing, make sure to watch 10 Very Big Books podcast on YouTube or listen to it on Spotify. They do a great job of going through the series chapter by chapter. But I am just one man. So this is my thoughts on, though I do listen to series religiously after I finish whatever particular chapter I'm on. So, yeah, I'll see you all on my thoughts on the second half of this novel. And then we move on to the grand finale of the Book of the Fallen. Anyway, until next time, guys. I'll see you then.